HRBC show called Let's Talk. Now, today we have the Honorable Levar Stoney, and he is running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. So, we're going to find out, have a little chit chat with him, and see if he is the right man for your vote. Let's talk. So, hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm good. So, you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Yes. So, as you stated earlier, my name is Levar Stoney. I'm 44 years old. I'm the former mayor of Richmond, Virginia. Prior to that, I was the Secretary of the Commonwealth in the Governor McCall's cabinet. I was the youngest person ever to hold that role, and the youngest person ever to hold that role, the youngest person in his cabinet, and the first African American Secretary of the Commonwealth. I graduated from James Madison University, and I've been in Richmond for 20 plus years. But I grew up in Hampton Roads. I grew up on the peninsula, raised by my grandmother, who brought me up on her Social Security check, and my father, who was a returning citizen who worked odd-end jobs like construction and things of that nature. So I'm the first in my family to graduate from high school, to go to college, to graduate from college. And it has been a privilege over the course of the last 20 years to work in public service and Virginia government. And I'm looking forward to being the next lieutenant governor of this great state.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a few questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, here we go. First question. What made you want to run for lieutenant governor?
Well, you're the mayor of the capital city. You are probably residing in one of the hardest, most difficult jobs in all of Virginia government. And I saw it as a privilege to serve as the mayor of Richmond. And from that point of view, you also get to see the gaps between local governments and also the state government, the policy gaps, the fiscal gaps as well. I think it's one thing to go say, oh, we passed a bill out of the General Assembly and got the governor's signature, but it's local governments who are left to execute and implement the legislation and the policies coming from out of Richmond. And so I've seen that firsthand. And I just believe that right now, more than ever, we need people who are going to be in the office of lieutenant governor who are proven fighters and who can deliver results. And as mayor of Richmond, over the course of 8 years, we reduced poverty by 33%. We were able to increase funding for our schools by nearly 60%, and we took down the old Confederate monuments here in the city, and I'm very proud of that. And I think I have the skill set that would avail myself to being a pretty good lieutenant governor, not just for the area I represented, but also throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Okay. All right. So currently, Virginians are hit the most by the government cutbacks. What are your thoughts on how to help them in this trying time?
Well, first, in order to help federal workers who are those who are either lost their jobs or about to lose their jobs, I think it's very important that you have someone who's not going to be silent. And here's the case. Whether it's Glenn Youngkin or Winsome Sears or Jason Miyares or John Reed, all you hear is silence out of our current leadership here in Virginia. And right now, we have 300,000 federal workers, 400,000 workers who are connected to federal contracting. And then you add armed forces to that. 1 in every 7 workers here in Virginia is tied to the federal government. And so this is not the moment to be silent. This is right now, you need folks who are willing to stand up for their workers and to protect their livelihoods, because silence is complicity. So that's number one. Number two, you got to think that if these folks lose their jobs, the Weldon Cooper School already stated that we could lose up to 32,000 jobs this year. And you could see unemployment rise to over 4%. If these folks lose their jobs, local governments, whether in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia or in Virginia Beach, are set to lose out on a ton of revenue when it comes to the real estate tax. And the real estate tax is what fuels the basics, the fundamentals of governance at the local level. And so this could be a ripple effect throughout the Commonwealth, from our households to the Virginia budget. And that's the last thing we need to deal with a potential recession on the horizon.
Okay. All right. So our unemployment system could really use an overhaul. So I was once unemployed. And when I attempted to log into the system to, start that whole process, it was telling me I already had a password. And then it gave me a number to call to reset the password, but no one answered that phone. So when you go into the office, you're like, hey, I can't get on. And they make you, sign up to schedule an appointment just to get on the phone that someone will answer to reset your password. So by that time had passed, it was like 2 weeks I had lost. But luckily, I'm a retired military person, so I already had a check. But imagine if I did not have a check and I was dependent on unemployment.
That's right.
Like, that is a horrible system. So what are your thoughts on how you would advocate to improve that system?
Well, just like you, I've been unemployed before as well. Worked on a number in my early years. After graduating from college, I worked on a number of political campaigns. And when a political campaign is over, it's over. If you lose, you lose, and you may find yourself on the unemployment rolls. Well, I've lost a few campaigns in which I worked on some years ago, and I found myself unemployed. And I said, well, you know what? I got some savings. I'm going to try and draw down some unemployment. Well, that was the most difficult, challenging, and frustrating process I've ever underwent. And I have a college degree. So I'm always thinking to myself, imagine for folks who got, multiple challenges in their lives, trying their best to draw down, unemployment benefits. So I think moving forward, we've made some progress. I got to give credit to Governor Youngkin on this in terms of improving the system, but there's still some steps that we can take. I think we have to take more steps to modernize the website and the application process. We can make it more user-friendly for everyday Virginians. I'm also a big believer that we have to use current technology that's out there. Kids can Google right now, and right there on Google, they will have an AI chat box right there that you can also use artificial intelligence tools. We need to embrace those tools as well in state government, particularly when it comes to unemployment. I think that's something we need to focus on over at VEC. Also, we got to continue to expand our outreach and support, particularly during this moment where a lot of people could be losing their federal jobs. And I'm a big believer that we got to raise the benefit levels as well, because I think it's roughly $60 or so a week. And I'm sorry, $60 a week is not going to get you through the storm that you are experiencing when you lose your job. I think that's problematic. I think we're near the bottom of the list when you talk about the 50 states when it comes to our maximum, the minimum unemployment benefits or the maximum unemployment benefits you can receive. And so I think we got to do a better job in that, because this is where people are experiencing the worst time in their lives, right here and there. And I think that people need to be treated with dignity through this process. And waiting around 2 weeks to see whether or not your password works or if you can even get access is problematic for everyone.
Okay, well, thanks. I may be unemployed again one day, so hope that works.
We gotta make it easy. And here's the thing: anyone could end up with losing their job. We don't know what economic storm is ahead of us, and so we should prepare ourselves for the worst moments in our lives.
Yes. Okay. So the price of everything is going up. Would you be in favor of cutting our 65 and older citizens a break for not paying real estate tax if their houses are already paid for?
Well, I think a lot of localities, whether Portsmouth or Hampton or Richmond or Fairfax, we do provide some exemptions already for veterans, for the disabled, and also for seniors as well. When I was mayor, we upped the threshold for seniors. on your income thresholds, how much money you had coming into your household. A lot of folks were living on a fixed income already anyway. So we were able to do that when I was mayor. Number two, my last year in office, we created what we call the RVA stay plan. This would allow for us to freeze your assessments at a certain level, at the previous year's level. So these assessments, with more and more people moving in and your home becoming more and more valuable, it locks you in without those increases rising. So you get locked in, and also you still have access to the senior citizen level exemptions as well. I think that's very important. In addition to that, we've also over the years provided rebates to our homeowners. But I think you're absolutely right. When I think about housing costs in Virginia today, let's say you were a renter. There are 1 million renters today in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and more than half of them are spending a third of their annual income on housing costs. And that housing cost also includes what you spend on real estate taxes. And so I'm a big believer with the fundamentals of one's life starts with a roof over your head. And so how do we solve this issue of cost disease? Big believer that you got to build more housing so we can actually, provide more homes to meet the demand that we have out there. But also, I think for those who've been living in their homes for a very long time, that they not get crushed by gentrification, not get crushed by market forces, lock them at a certain rate while everybody else rises around them, their assessment stays at that level.
That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. We did it in Richmond. They do it in Charlottesville. They can do it around the state.
Cool. All right. So military retirees were promised health care for life, but have to get Medicare Part A and B. Would you be willing to advocate to our congressional representatives to stop making retirees 65 and above pay for Medicare and add the ambulance usage to the TRICARE for Life package?
Yeah, so my brother is currently serving. He's in the Air Force, and he's a recruiter as well. And so he has to walk many of these new recruits through the programs and benefits that are offered to those service people, right? Service persons. He sort of somewhat educated me on Medicare Part B and also the TRICARE for Life as well. And you're right. I guess it's never been codified, but many of our service people have been told that, you know what, you're going to be covered when it comes to your healthcare costs for essentially a lifetime. And if you get sick, you need to use the ambulance services, and you find that bill arrives on your doorstep, and you're like, well, where's this coming from? I think TRICARE for Life should be able to help cover that instead of you all being dinged twice, essentially, for such a cost. But my real worry right now is the cuts that are occurring at the federal level. There are cuts to every agency, every department. In the Department of Defense, we talked about the health agency within the Department of Defense. They're cutting back on personnel that help sort of process these premiums, these claims, and whatnot. I think that's problematic as well, because you have veterans waiting around to get their claims processed as well. And as we know, every dollar by every day matters. And so I think that's problematic too. It's a cascading of events that can potentially occur. And I think that right now, more than ever, we got to live up to what we told our veterans and treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
Okay. All righty. So there are a lot of African-American people in jail serving lifetimes for nonviolent crimes. Would you be willing to advocate for common sense parole guidelines that will be fair across the board and get them back into society to be productive citizens?
You know, I'm a big believer that elected leaders, particularly, I'm a Democrat. I'm a believer that we have to put our values into action. And I grew up in a home raised by my grandmother, who believed in forgiveness, who believed in redemption, and believed in mercy. And that's why I was proud when I was Secretary of the Commonwealth to be responsible for the reform of the restoration of rights process, where we restored rights to over 200,000 disenfranchised Virginians, people like my father who made a mistake early in their lives and unfortunately have to walk around Virginia with a scarlet letter on their chest because there's a felony on their record. And so another role I played in the McAuliffe administration was I co-chaired the Parole Review Commission. And that I chaired it alongside former Republican Attorney General Mark Earley, former Secretary of Public Safety Brian Moran. And there were 23 recommendations that were made as a part of that commission. We had public hearings on the process. We brought experts in. We talked about including expanding the earned sentence credits, reforming mandatory minimums, and providing more relief to those fishback inmates as well. I'm just a big believer that our system at times can be way too punitive, particularly for nonviolent offenses. And so I think too many Virginians, especially Black Virginians, are serving excessive time for nonviolent crimes. And I just think that those crimes would be handled differently today compared to what they were 30 or 40 years ago. And so I support fair, consistent parole guidelines that I think that reflect more rehabilitation, but also the fact that we believe in redemption as well. How about we have a system that redeems the individual versus punishes the individual for life? That's the system I think should be the North Star of corrections for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Okay. So your site says you will advocate for programs that address the root causes of economic insecurities and give children the tools they need to thrive. Do you already have some programs in mind?
Yeah, I sure do. First, I'm a big believer that how a child starts dictates the route they will take in their life. And I'm a big believer of early childhood education, intervening in those early years. Right now, I have a 15-month-old at home, and I can tell you already, we are giving her words day in and day out. And I know that that's where the separation for our children begins, right? The kid who's growing up in a home that has access to good early childhood education, their parents are giving them words day in and day out. They go in one direction, and the other kids who don't receive that same care go in a different direction. I just believe that every child should have access to that. That, to me, is giving our children a fair shot. In Richmond, we created nearly 400 new early childhood education and care seats through the YWCA, opening up sites all throughout the Richmond area. Giving those kids the best start possible will give them a fair shot. So I'm a big believer in investing in early childhood education. Universalizing that should be the North Star. Number two, I'm also a big believer that K through 12, particularly right now, as during you look at public education in Virginia today, Harvard just stated that we rank dead last in reading recovery since the pandemic. Math recovery since the pandemic. And we rank 41st in reading recovery from the pandemic. We rate at the bottom in that recovery since the pandemic. And what this does, this impacts Black and brown neighborhoods or Black and brown kids the most. And so I'm a big believer that we're going to do everything we can to catch these kids up. In Richmond, we have done for about 5 schools, 200-day academic calendar. And the more instruction the kid gets, the better they actually perform in the classroom, and it's showing in the assessments afterwards. Our kids' scores have gone above pre-pandemic levels. I'm also a big believer that we have to be innovative, and that means investing in more one-on-one tutoring for our kids who are struggling the most. One-on-one, whether virtually or in person, giving our kids more attention to catch them up. My fear is that if you look at the pandemic as a creature, it's the tail of this creature now that we're dealing with. And that the tail is where the kids are being harmed the most. It's going to last with them for a very long time, which means we as a society are robbing them of their potential generational talent and wealth. We got to invest early today. I'm also a big believer as well, where a kid lives also matters. Right now, I know there are kids whose parents having a hard time paying the rent right now, or they're locked in to where they live. They want to live somewhere else. They want more options of a better neighborhood, but they can't get out.
Mm.
Studies show that we're not mobile like we used to be back in the day. In the 80s and the 70s, folks would move to a better lifestyle. Oh, I'm going to move to Virginia Beach because I hear the schools are better and I hear, I can make more money there. But guess what? Now it's become more and more difficult for working class people to find that same opportunity that my family found in Virginia, moving from Long Island, New York to Hampton Roads. We have to build better homes, more homes that are more affordable, that so our children and our families have better choices for their educational and also economic outcomes. I'm a big believer in that.
Awesome. Okay, so now you have a question from our one of our members. Her name is Erica Gillette. I'm gonna have to scoot up a little bit. Oh no,
Hello, Erica.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. So I saw on your website that one of your categories was strengthening schools.
Yes.
So I wanted to know how you plan on doing that, especially when you have a teacher shortage, some parents not involved with the academic success as well as behavioral success within the school system. And sometimes you have administration that are not there for the teachers. Seem like there's a rift, a war going on between administration and teachers.
Yeah.
So I was just curious in how you plan on doing that.
Well, great question. And I think you just covered the entire spectrum of a child's educational journey, right? It's not just what a child gets in the classroom. We also have to remind folks that what happens at home also matters. If our kids are are in a challenging environment at home in terms of poverty, it's even more difficult to educate them in the classroom. But we need the parents in that partnership because a child's success can only solely be found within the classroom. So first, I'm a big believer that we need to fund the true cost of public education. I think a recent JLARC study, JLARC being the research arm of the General Assembly, has stated that every child who walks into a school facility today is lacking $1,900 to meet the actual need of the true cost of that child, to educate that child. And so, number one, we got to fund the true cost of public education. That true cost, what does it look like? Well, back in 2008, when the Great Recession hit, the state reduced the caps on the numbers on how they were going to go about funding social workers and guidance counselors, the staff in the facility, in the school, that also will help with educating a child, particularly those who are struggling with the challenges of poverty. We need to strip those caps off, fund the true cost of public education. Number two, I'm also a big believer that we should fund programs that allow for our kids, or allow for our families to be part of the process. There's an accountability here. And I was a big believer in Richmond that if we fund programs in which whether school officials or educators alone, can visit the households, like the same attention that they get in private school settings or in charter school settings, but fund those similar approaches in the public school setting, we can engage the family and get them more involved in their child's educational journey as well. I'm a big believer in that. Now, my fear is with the DOE being dismantled and the sort of investment we normally get for kids who have learning differences, IDEPs, Title I schools, that money now coming in a block instead of coming directly to school divisions. We're going to have to figure out how to fill those gaps. And if we don't fill those gaps, what you're going to see is a real divide between the have and the have-nots. I increased funding for Richmond Public Schools by nearly 60% on my watch because I wanted my kids not to be destined to the underclass of my city or in my region. But with the dismantling of DOE, you could see that separation become wider than it ever has ever been before. I'm fearful of that. The state is going to have to step up, but I'm telling you all today, there are not enough dollars. There are not enough dollars in the current budget to fill all these gaps. We're going to have to find other ways to do so.
Okay, can you tell me what programs you're thinking about implementing to encourage family engagement?
Oh yeah,
Since some of the problems is a lack of parental involvement, and we're seeing that, for instance, seventh graders reading at a third grade level, you know, that's the barrier to academic success. We're seeing that when teachers are trying to help the parent by stating, this is what I see with your child, some parents are very resistant. So what programs are you looking at, or maybe creating yourself, that would help with establishing rapport between parents and teachers, as well as building trust within the teachers to know that we have your kids for this amount of hours. We see a lot of things that you don't see as a parent, but you see things that we don't see as the parent. So how do you plan to bridge that gap?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that particularly you see this in urban environments, but it can be scaled up for suburban environments and also rural environments as well. I'm a big believer in school-based home visits, okay? Where educators or trained home visitors on the school payroll, people who are like social workers or parent educators, can meet families in their homes. Because guess what? Even though we would want our families to come to these parent teacher conferences, they're not showing up.
No,
they're not showing up. I grew up in a home. I mean, God bless my father's soul. My father couldn't find the time to come to a parent teacher conference. I don't think my dad attended one parent teacher conference. And in Richmond, we rarely see our kids, our Black parents, come out the same way as our white parents do. But guess what? What families are showing up? The Latino families. They're coming to visit their kids during lunchtime, and even though they can't speak the language, they're also coming to parent-teacher conferences as well. So I want to reverse the paradigm here. I think we should have educators who can go to the home, meet our families where they are, build trust in the home. I don't know I can't tell you whether that's what it looks like on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, but we should have trained educators who can visit our parents in their homes. And also they can see with their own two eyes the problems that our kids are dealing with. We can't just wait for the parents to come to us in the regular status quo parent-teacher conference setting. We have to find the educators who can go to them. And let me tell you this, in private settings, they're doing this. In charter settings, they're doing this. We have to train the personnel in the public setting to do the same thing.
Or maybe hire more social workers, because at the end of the day, teachers are very tired with all that they have to contend with within the 8 hours of work.
That's absolutely right. That's why when I was mayor, I funded, when I increased the budget for our schools, it was there for hiring more guidance counselors and social workers. And we all know that it's those school districts with a higher percentage of kids growing up with the challenges of poverty that need that personnel the most.
Okay. So now you got a question from social media. Randall Williams said, what are you planning to do concerning combating the misinformation spreading about your input in the water crisis? A lot of what was said about you is wrong because you made investments before you left.
Thank you, Rand, for recognizing that. Yeah, I made millions and millions of dollars in investments in water infrastructure just in general, right? And when you are the leader of a old city, Richmond is as old as cities like Boston and New York. people only see what you see above ground. They don't see what's going on underground where the infrastructure is. And that infrastructure is old. We had a water plant that's over 100 years old. We have a combined sewer overflow here in Richmond where if it rains too much, the treated sewage empties into the river. A lot of cities across America have the same sort of system. Richmond has one, $1 billion fix for that one. And then you have old lead pipes that could seep into the water supply and that could damage a lot of kids in their early years. And so I put upwards of $400 million in investment in water infrastructure as the mayor of Richmond. In addition to that, for every budget I proposed, I adjusted the water utility rate by nearly 21% by the time I left, pouring more of those dollars back into water infrastructure. Now, here's the thing. I recognize that there are some people, because of politics, want to play the blame game. But I'm telling you this as a Richmond resident, blame won't fix the pipes. Blame won't fix the water plant. Blame won't fix the combined sewer overflow system in Richmond. What will fix it is the investment that we need from the state level and the federal level in partnership. There are folks I'm running against who had an opportunity to be a champion for Richmond after the current water crisis occurred in January, and crickets in terms of them putting forward budget amendments that would help fix the situation. So what I'm going to do is go out there and continue to tell the truth. Also remind folks that I was not the mayor on January 6th. I have no knowledge of what occurred on that day. But what I do know from reading all the reports is human error is to blame. Not whether it's just the January 6th occurrence, the fluoride mishap, or the recent boil water advisory. Human error is to blame. And I'm a big believer, if you don't have people in the middle of your organization whose responsibility is sending the critical information up the chain, then how are the executives, the leaders at the top, ever going to know about it? And that's exactly what I read from these reports, what was happening in the Richmond water treatment plant. Middle level individuals suppressing, doing the CYA. We know what the CYA is, cover your ass, using those sort of approaches to their jobs. Bad for Richmond, bad for everyone.
Okay. So my last question, if elected, what are your top 3 things you hope to accomplish?
Top 3 things. Number 1, this is how I see the role of lieutenant governor. I think the lieutenant governor is a public advocate, right? Someone who's public facing, who is present, particularly since this is considered what they call a part-time job or a ceremonial role. This has to be a full-time job for the next lieutenant governor, and will be for me. And that means for me, number 1, highlighting the issues that matter to working people around Virginia. I'm going to do what for Lieutenant Governor Kane did, follow his playbook, and that is visit every school division in the state. That means I'll be visiting every locality in the state to highlight the issues, the gaps for that our kids and educators are suffering from. I want to make sure I put that on Front Street. Number 2, I'm going to ask the next governor, Abigail Spanberger, for a line of work, a portfolio of work. That work will be around housing. We need to build more housing in Virginia. And I'm a big believer that the state can play a more intentional role in incentivizing localities to adopt more pro-housing reforms. I want to be a champion for the next housing boom in the Commonwealth. We essentially stopped building housing after the Great Recession. It's time to start building housing again. And that means, number 1, the state making some investment, putting some skin in the game. But number 2, a word that Democrats don't use enough is that we have to think about how to go about deregulating, making it easier for people to build more units in locality after locality. That means incentivizing them to do so, to change their rules, to change their zoning codes. Last but not least, we have to make the permitting process. We have to streamline that. By the time a person who has an affordable idea for a home goes through all these processes, gas hookup, sewer hookup, that home that was first started out as an affordable idea then becomes a real market value home not affordable for many people, particularly millennials, Gen Zers, Black and brown neighbors as well. I think that's something we have to fix.
Okay. Now, is there anything else you would like to tell the people?
Yeah, I would like to tell the folks that, you know what, this election's on Tuesday, June 17th, and they're expecting a low turnout. And we need everyone to not sit on the couch on this one and come out and support the best candidates for these offices of Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. And I believe I'm the best candidate for Lieutenant Governor because I bring the most formal government experience to the race. I bring the most formal government experience to the race since, as a Democrat, since former Governor Doug Wilder served as Lieutenant Governor. I have 10 years of public service experience. I served in the executive branch as the Secretary of the Commonwealth when I was 32. And at 35 years old, for 8 years, I served as the mayor of Richmond. I think that service, that experience matters now more than ever. We need folks who can hit the ground running and be ready on day one. And I'm telling you all today, I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, thank you for taking time to talk with us. And
thank you for the opportunity.
And that is all that we have. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Bye.